radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Good evening. How you doing? Fade to Black. Today is Thursday, June 5th, 2025. Let's do this. Man, that's right. We are closing out another great week here on Fade to Black. Monday night, we had Dr. Simeon Hine with us. Cold Fusion explains all. Tuesday night, Hugh Newman was with us. Go Beckley and Kara Hantepi. Last night, Trey Hudson was here to talk about the meadow and its high strangeness. And tonight, Dale Graff joins us. And wow, what a conversation tonight. The Psi Field, yes. Precog dreams, yes. RV, yes. Remote viewing, Stargate, SRI. We are going to do everything tonight. But before that, I have two major events coming up. I've got Peru coming up in about 10 days, heading down there with Brian Forrester. And there through the end of the month, I come back for the Psi Games. That's right. It should be called the Dale Graff Games, but that's another story. The Psi Games, August 1st through the 3rd, 2025 in Charlottesville, Virginia. I am the host of this event. The links for it are below. That's right. It is the Psychic Olympics. All right, before I bring in Dale, I wanted to mention iSpace from Japan and their Resilience lunar lander failed today. It was just announced about an hour ago that the mission did indeed fail. No information on what happened, but that was the announcement out of Japan from iSpace. And it's difficult. It's difficult. Don't think it's easy. It's not. It's difficult to get stuff to land on the moon. I don't know how we did it in 1969, 1968. It just makes you wonder, doesn't it? All right. So with that, let's get this show started. Dale Graff is with us tonight, as I just mentioned. We're going to talk about things that he has termed and coined, actually, Psi Field, and we're going to be talking about precognition dreams. And as we explore dreams tonight, we're also going to talk about remote viewing, the Psi Field as tools for expanding awareness. We're going to do all of that. Future News Precognitive Dream Project. We're going to cover that. Intuition, synchronicity, and everything else under the sun when it comes to the subject. We're going to do it all tonight. Why? Because Dale is a retired aerospace engineer physicist who worked for the intelligence community at the Air Force Foreign Technology Division and the Defense Intelligence Agency, otherwise known as the DIA. Key assignments were chief of the Advanced Concepts Office, a chief director of the Stargate Remote Viewing Unit at Fort Meade, Maryland, contract manager for remote viewing research at Stanford Research Institute, SRI. That's right, he coined the term Stargate. We are going to cover all of that tonight and much more. I would like to welcome, for the first time to Fade to Black, Dale Graff. Dale.
Okay, wow. What an introduction. Thank you very much.
You know, you got a lot done in your young life. Wow.
Yeah, I sometimes wonder about that. Yes.
You know, okay, before we get started, and you know what I'm about to do. How many times tonight am I going to crack that joke, Dale, and maybe get a laugh out of it? But you get the first time guest disclaimer. Okay, so let's get that out of the way, which is this. Dale, it's just you and I sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends. And where that conversation starts, it starts. Where it ends, but we're going to end as friends. Now, you have to accept so we can move on.
I accept.
Oh, man. Okay. All right. That was no fight, no pushback.
And,
No pushback.
and I'm not a robot. So
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Oh, you
Right.
clicked on that. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
That was good. Before we get into one of my favorite subjects, Dale, is remote viewing, consciousness, entanglement, everything that is involved with that and how it gets done. It's going to be a great conversation tonight. But before we get there, I just want to get a couple of questions out of the way for me personally. Working for DIA and the Foreign Technologies Division, and all the chatter that goes on today with testimony in the House and so forth about UFO crash retrievals and flying saucers and what we have, and backwards engineering. Is the government in possession of that? And with your work at the Foreign Technologies Division, and I know if you've got to keep secrets, but you can tap once for yes and then twice for no if you do that. Are we in possession? Is our government in possession of flying saucers?
Well, when I was at the Foreign Technology Division, I had the fortune to sit next to Project Blue Book for a while, the office that actually handled a lot of the data that was reported to FTD. FTD had the hotline, so any sighting would be called into them. It's ran 24 hours a day. And so I had an opportunity to actually go through the files and talk to the people that were at that time in charge of the activity. It closed down in 1969, and I was there a couple of years before that. And all my efforts in talking to them and going through the files, I didn't find any clear evidence that there was anything really sequestered at FTD in any of the hangars or anywhere. So I just had to pass on that and say, I really don't know. I couldn't uncover anything. They seemed straightforward and willing to share secrets. We were in a top secret facility. They would have probably told me if there was anything super classified that they were keeping somewhere on base or even within the FTD building itself. But quite frankly, I could never uncover anything while I was there.
What does your gut tell you? Your intuition?
I'm somewhat skeptical of it. I think they probably have found something, but whether it's what you would call a UFO or something extraterrestrial, that I'm not certain about. But I really think they probably do have some kind of material, wherever that came from. Maybe there's some weird meteorite that came in. Who knows? So I don't know. I'm really on the fence on this. But I don't
okay.
really think.
I like your answer there, although evasive, by the way.
Yeah.
We're just gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's a huge but here. A lot of remote viewing, Ingo Swann comes to mind, but there has been a lot of remote viewing about this subject, both on planet and off planet, about ET and contact and what may be out there. How accurate has that remote viewing been, in your opinion?
Well, you can't really evaluate that. You have to look at the track record of the individuals. What did they do in other projects? Then compare that to what they were then producing on these projects or these tasks. And a lot of the material that, I was able to see during my tenure at FTD and later, actually DIA, I couldn't really come to a firm conclusion that they had made any clear connection. There might have been some symbolic stuff going on, and there might have been something about communication with some non-terrestrial intelligence, wherever it might come from, and present it in a way which they might understand it, the UFO picture, the UFO image. But whether it was an actually physical thing, I really couldn't tell. And the data that I looked at, again, a lot of them, there might have been some overlap with what people were doing. And it's hard to say when you have a number of people working on a project. Did one individual drive the information base, and they just tapped into what that individual was saying? So if one individual really believed in UFOs, the others might have actually tracked along and perceived the same thing through remote viewing or intuition or whatever the mode was. So I'm holding back on this. And I've really tried hard to get through to it. When I was at DIA, I did a lot of extra studies on this, and it's just elusive. It's sort of an esoteric topic in a way. I'm a little uncertain that what's coming out of the remote viewers is a real fact. It may be something that's there, that's communicating to us in ways that we understand it, but not actually real in that sense. I don't know
Very
if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting take. And then, okay, let me ask you a question then. If have you had a sighting yourself?
Well, in the work I do over the years, I do a lot of lucid dreaming, and in lucid dream work, you do end up actually having imagery that resembles what you would call a mandala or disc-shaped forms, but I take them more as a symbolic thing, that this is the way that we connect with our subconscious mind. And the psychology of Carl Jung, which was a contemporary of Sigmund Freud, really developed that theory of the archetype in symbols from deep within the subconscious. Mm-hmm. So it sometimes in lucid dream work, with some of my own work and with my colleagues, these images show up, but they're not about a real thing out there. It's more about what's going on inside of you. It's a way the subconscious mind is saying that you have connected with a level of your consciousness or subconsciousness, which is not the ordinary consciousness. You're going beyond what was normally reachable.
So, sure, but okay. I'm just tracking with what you had just said. So let's stay there for a second.
Yeah.
Let's suppose that you did see an object in the sky, not in your conscious. You're out with friends, and you see something in the sky, and you say to your friends, I'm just tracking with what you're saying. Then you say to your friends, wow, I wonder if that was a UFO. Does that turn around, because now that is in your thought process, that could turn around and influence other remote viewers in what they possibly might do in the future?
It's possible. What we perceive out there, you have to go back to the idea of the holograms, and something is maybe projected and it appears to be out there, but it's not really out there. And, I just got through reviewing one of Inga Swan's books called Apparitions of the Virgin Mary or something, a title like that. And there were a lot of apparitions that were seen by multiple sources. And everyone said that image is out there. It's not in my mind. It's in front of me. It's real out there. So experiences like that, and then comparing these apparitional experiences to a UFO encounter, there are some similarities, I would say. And I'm just not sure whether we can say it is really out there. It could still be a joint perception of multiple people having the same image or similar images. In fact, I'm reminded of the incident, and I think it was Hal Putoff that told me this years ago. When I first became involved at SRI, we were talking about Uri Geller, and apparently there was an instance where when they were working with Geller in the early 70s, they were out there in the parking lot breaking up for the day, and somebody says to Geller, well, see, at that time, Geller had the notion of this mothership that was beaming or transmitting his capability, his ESP, his remote viewing abilities. and other things. So he said, well, if you want to see a UFO, then just look up in the sky and you'll see one. And there were 4 or 5 other individuals there, Hal, Russ, and maybe 2 or 3 others. And they looked up there, and they did see what they thought was a UFO. So Hal says, well, let's go back to the office. Don't talk about what you saw. We'll go back and individually draw what we saw and then compare the drawings. So they go back to the office, and each one does a sketch, and none of the sketches coincided with each other. They were all different perceptions of the UFO, so-called UFO sighting. So here, I think it's a case where there's a mental image projection that somehow can be attributed to Geller, and it actually was perceived by those in the immediate vicinity there in the parking lot. So I'm just tossing that out as a talking point.
And is that an example of consciousness and possibly entanglement? You're a physicist. Is that an example of that?
Well, it's an example of shared perceptions,
right?
And we interpret them maybe in our own, from our own background point of view, our own experience. So individuals from that never really studied the literature on UFOs would have some totally different idea of what this object that they were now all of a sudden perceiving would be like. They compare it to something else, a flying carrot or something, or something familiar to their background. So it's sort of a shared experience. And now, where is the element of reality to it? There's something here that's causing that experience. So and maybe that's the way that we need to really look at it. Is there a communication attempt from some, I use the term multidimensional source. Here's we can get into the entanglements concepts here as well. And that there's something coming through, and it's just being translated differently by different people. Then when you have a number of people focusing on the same objective, it's more likely that you will have that similar perception, although it may be perceived in a different format. So it's an area that I think really needs to be looked at. How do we really perceive these?
And staying right here, if you don't mind,
Mm-hmm.
With the world of science right now, and
Mm-hmm.
and certainly physics and quantum mechanics and quantum computing, it seems that science is turning more woo than our woo-woo laden community.
Right? Yeah, it is.
And science is doing all the work for us. We were yelling about this for years and years and years and years, decades. And now science is entering crazy town, aren't they?
Well, yes, and quantum physics is a crazy town, So, and that was really not really believable, even by Einstein himself. So, sure, it's a wild world when you really probe around in the quantum physics domain. So, what's space-time there? How does entanglement really work? How can a particle be connected no matter where it is in the universe and respond to an impulse or a correlating signal beyond, instantaneously? That's really woo-woo. But it's becoming more commonly read about. A magazine, Popular Mechanics, one of my favorites, is really doing a lot on advancing the ideas from quantum physics. And this is a nuts and bolts magazine. So when you start spreading the concepts around the community, including the people that are out there, just laboring away in their own mechanical world, now you start thinking about these strange things. It's going to catch on in our communal psyche, and more people will be more acceptable to it. So you're right. Physics is sort of rocking the door And the rest of us who are already there are opening up and say, yeah, well, hello, welcome, physics. Where have you been all these years? So,
Yeah. I remember, Dale, you're going to love this. This is probably 10, 12 years ago. And I started to get on the soapbox and yelling, cracking jokes about it. But I was saying that science and physics and the idea of consciousness and our community are two trains heading down the same track, about to collide, and where they, our community wanted the support of science, but science, man, always, and now they are about to crash into each other. It's very interesting, and I joked about it 12 years ago, but here we are today with these ideas that are being posed out there and posited out there that are just conscious, awakened belief systems, but it's coming from science. It's not coming from our community. It's a collision that was inevitable, wasn't it?
yes, unless you go back a couple of thousand years,
Right.
the early concepts up in Tibet or in other Eastern ideas or cosmologies were already there. They maybe didn't have the science words to go with it, but we may be in a sense of a collision course, but we're also in a sense of digging up some old history that we should have been looking at more deeply years ago. But here we are and looking at them. And, and a lot of the physicists, and David Bohm comes to mind, actually studied the ancient traditions, the early traditions. And I think that kind of formed the ideas in their minds about these, the way consciousness can interact with the universe. And it might have led the way to some of the early theories in quantum physics as well, based on the esoteric teachings from the Middle Eastern world, from the Eastern traditions. So yeah, it's there, and we're just now finding a language for it and having experiments that demonstrate it. But even with science becoming more, opening the door, so to speak, to woo-woo stuff, there's still the problem of accepting Psi, the term I like to use for this overall ability of intuition and remote viewing and precognitive dreaming. There's still a problem of accepting it in science as a personal thing, as something that individuals actually do have. I don't see a lot of government funding right now being applied to just research of it.
There's no government funding for anything at the moment.
Well, you got the point there.
Yeah. Let
me
ask
you downhill.
To get a PhD in physics, should each student, and even postgrad, should it be required that you spend a semester in Tibet?
It would help,
that would change things. Yeah, that would change things, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it sure would. Yeah. But actually, parapsychologists have for decades been saying that in order to really understand the field and advance the field, you need to actually experience the phenomenon itself. Early parapsychologists sort of tried to keep the distance from this topic they were actually studying. But I think you get more insight. You get a better understanding of the whole process if the researchers themselves develop the abilities or develop some degree of remote viewing or dream recall and whatever, because it puts them in touch with that deeper nature of themselves where we experience this phenomenon. They can better understand it. So that's one area. But even so, in general physics, I think educational institutes throughout should offer or just make available the programs that provide this background. Now you can probably get this anyway by just going to the local bookstore and seeing what seminars or what lectures are being held that evening. So it's not that impossible anymore for it. But is there a motivation for, say, the graduate physics student to do this? Probably not. But do you have to?
if you have to, then you would, right? If you have to, to get your PhD,
Yeah.
you have to go to Tibet for a semester and have some monk bless you with a falcon wing. I'm just saying, because there's something else going on that is connecting the universe, and it's not necessarily something you're going to develop with an algorithm on a whiteboard, right?
No, you're absolutely right. And even so, there are areas where you can actually go. You don't have to go all the way to Tibet, but there are ashrams, there are other enclaves where you can actually become absorbed in this this procedure, this philosophy, and understand the basis of where they're coming from. So it's more readily available now than ever before. But will people take advantage of this? Will the PhD graduate student go out of his way to do this? And unless you're, like you say, unless you're forced to do it, and that may not be a good thing to do if you're not used to the high altitude climate in Tibet. So, but even that would be worthwhile doing, just from an endurance point of view. And
just think about how much cooler Neil deGrasse Tyson would be. I'm just saying, Dale. I'm just saying. Let me ask you a question. Please, I don't want to embarrass you in any way in saying this, but the word Stargate is bandied about a little bit too freely these days, but it's also become an accepted form of pop culture. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You coined the term Stargate when it comes to remote viewing. Where did that come from for you? Or was it some kind of precog?
Well, that's a good question. That when the NBC program broke the news on Stargate in 1995, I was asked that question, and I'll have the same response. I'll go through briefly how that came about. When I was transferred to Fort Meade to actually manage the activity there, become the chief, we decided to change the code words. You had to do this anyway every couple of years, or maybe 3 years, because this was a special access control area program, that project that we were on. So now we have to come up with another word. Okay, now we have guidelines from the security people in a booklet that says, here are the code words you choose from whenever you develop a new special access program or change words. So I looked through that, and so did the others in the group, and none of the terms in there looked really that appealing. And I had this gut feel that if we're going to really move ahead with this field, and with remote viewing, we were at that point still in a secret enclave there at Fort Meade, but if it ever becomes public, we really need to have a better word. So we need something that's more symbolic. So I'm driving home from the office, and at that time, I lived about 50 miles from Fort Meade, so I had to go through this swampy area to get to one of the little side roads. And I'm driving through this swampy area. It's nighttime, and there's a mist floating around. It's kind of a spooky place. and the mist cleared, and I see this little tiny star peek through. I said, gee, that's really interesting. Then the mist misted up again. So I get home, and I think, well, that was like a gate opening in the sky, in the mist. What's wrong with the word Stargate? It has a ring to it. There's the star, which is beyond, symbolizing something beyond ourselves. And the gate, like in remote viewing, we talk about aperture, or we talk about other means of opening our ability to have these experiences. So it struck me that it's really an interesting word. And I liked it. I tabled it. We had a big debate on that following day, 2 days. And, we kicked all kinds of words around. And, eventually it was agreed that this is a word that we'll go forward with. So I wrote because it was a word that was not in the accepted book of code words, I had to write a memo to be signed by one of the undersecretaries of defense. Here's a different word we would like to use for this activity at Fort Meade. And I had to explain what the activity was, without being too direct about it. You know how those writings go. You use
That's
words.
so cool.
Yeah, you write words that are not quite direct, but they get the point across. So I did that in a carefully worded memo, and sure enough, it was approved, and that's how we got the word Stargate, both from the misty sky or evening, and also the approval from the Undersecretary of Defense. So I'm happy that happened, that occurred that way, and I like the word. I'm really thrilled that it's taken on this kind of notice.
It's a worldwide accepted term.
And I use the term Stargate Navigator too now, because I'm a really big enthusiast, you might say, advocate of synchronicity. And, I like the idea that when we open up to this ability, those things happen that we're not really conscious about, but that are to our benefit. We have synchronicities. That's another term that Carl Jung developed way back in the early 1920s.
For sure. Yeah.
So I like to think that when we think about Stargate and the imagery that it invokes, and I use the term I used is we did the program also was to explore the bounds of human perception. So I use terms like that as well. And when I wrote those memos, so it's a term that just resonates, and we can use it as a connection with synchronicity as well. And I that's why I kind of use often I use the term as synchronicity, a synchronistic navigator in addition to Stargate navigation. So I'm playing with those terms. I haven't fully formulated them yet in how I really mean them. But the idea is that we're tuned to whatever the potential of Stargate suggests or provides, and when we do that, we can move through life in sort of a I don't want to say unconscious, but maybe it is, but in some kind of like automatic navigation system, and we avoid the things that we really need to avoid, and we find the things that really are useful for us. And lots of stories about this, right? Everybody has a synchronicity story, I'm sure of that. So then you don't even have to even think about it very much. It is not much of a protocol you have to go through. You just accept a possibility and say, yeah, it's going to happen.
Yeah, they're slapping you upside the head all day long. All you have to do is just pay attention.
Yeah.
Who was part of the team? Who was on the team when you arrived at Fort Meade?
Oh, let's see. I'm going back here. Okay, there was Mel Riley. There was Paul. Lynn Buchanan had been back there for another term. I think that Linda Anderson was there. We had Angela Ford. There was a few others there. I'm not quite sure the timing of all this, because some of the people I knew, through the years, they weren't there at that time when I was up there. Yeah, so there was we had about 7 or 8, not to mention the administrative side, that were the administrators and the data people, that. So we had about 10 or 12 at the time I was there.
Did everybody have the gift, or was it still being developed?
Well, that's always a question that I ponder myself. I think we all have the potential, and it's a matter of how you dive into it, so to speak, and the dedication, the focus, the intention, and you can then uncover more and more of this. So in a way, we all had the gift, but some of them were better, or you might say more reliable, or could more frequently correct than others, you might say. But we all had that, and some had different techniques that still produced results that were really quite good. So yeah, and I don't know what would happen had we continued the practicing and the developing. But the problem with the military side is, they usually are rotated out after every 3 or 4 years. So if you have developed a top-notch remote viewer, then you're not around, to really use later on, unless he's reassigned back into the unit, and that did happen, I think, a couple of times, like with Mel Riley and Lynn Buchanan. So yes,
can I ask? Was Joe McMonagle there when you were there?
Not when I was there. He had retired several years earlier.
Okay. What about? I'm just going to throw some names out there real quick. Ed Dames. Did you work with Ed Dames?
Oh yes, I did. I'm trying to remember if he had rotated out by the time I got there or not. Trying to remember. He may not have been in the office at the time I was there, but he was certainly there shortly before, several years before. So yes, I did. In fact, did connections with him.
What about Paul Smith? Did you work?
Oh yeah, Paul? Of course, Paul was there. I thought I mentioned him. Yes, Paul was there when I was there. Definitely.
That's a pretty Lynn Buchanan. What about Lynn?
Yeah, Lynn had come back, and as the second time, I think, from he had gone for a while to another military assignment, and then came back in at that time. Sure, I worked with Lynn quite thoroughly. Yes,
that's a really strong crew.
Yeah.
Who was okay? All right, now I know the answer. I know the correct answer, but I'm going to ask you.
Well, maybe I don't know the correct answer.
No, okay. Who was the coolest?
The coolest.
Yep.
By cool.
Yeah, who was the coolest dude in the group?
Oh God. Yeah.
There's only one answer. You're thinking too hard, Dale. I'm going Paul Smith.
Well.
You don't think Paul was the coolest? I swear to God, I'm calling him right now.
Oh, again, I'm pondering with the word cool. Yeah.
What definition do you have for the word cool? What are you working off of there, Dale?
Well, I tell you, I'm working off Arctic travel. That's pretty cool stuff. So cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know. Sure, they're all cool people. Which again, I don't particularly care to talk specifically about people.
The only reason why I ask that is because it's all about dynamics, and it's all about different personalities and the way that they approach this.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have that many open minds and people that consider something different, then that is a very eclectic group, a very powerful group of personalities. Yeah. And it must have been amazing.
Sure.
That's what I'm saying. But out of all of it, Paul Smith was the coolest.
I think Angela was really cool too.
Angela Brown? Yeah.
No, Angela Ford. She just had a different
Angela Ford. Did I say Brown?
Yeah, I don't know where Brown came from. Yeah.
No. Angela Ford, yeah.
Yeah, and then there were others. I can attach the word cool at different times to any of them. So just me. I was there as a supervisor, so I had to try to be as fair as possible to everyone. So I didn't want to take a particular stance regarding anyone. So maybe that's why I couldn't identify cool versus not as cool, or to degrees of coolness that you were talking about. But
so I'm going to ask Paul the same question.
Yeah, ask me
and I'm going to put you on the list.
Yeah. Well, put me on the list. Yeah, I'll be the anti-cool. Yeah, the other cool one was probably not as well known. Was Greg Stewart. I really thought he was a cool guy, but because of other things that he was interested in too as well. Because I'm not only looking at people from the point of view of the remote viewing side, but what else do they do? What are their interests in it? And Greg was really interesting because he was a Native American connection, and he did all this intricate beadwork. It was really, he was an artisan. So I really enjoyed working with him. I enjoyed working with all of them. but I thought his artwork was really outstanding. So that to me registers as a coolness.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Did you see? I'm just gonna spend literally 30 seconds on this. I'm sure you watched The Men Who Stare at Goats.
Yes, several times. Of
Okay,
course.
several times.
Yeah.
I know it's a comedy, but how close to the fire was it in reality?
Well, there were two aspects to that. This thing with the goats had nothing to do with when we were doing at Fort Meade. That was another Army unit.
Right.
There are some things in the program that did touch base with what we did. In fact, one of them was a project that I had actually set up that was performed at SRI, having to do with those mailboxes. I think that was the way they portrayed it in the movie. Somebody just described something in a box or in a series of boxes. That was one of the research projects that I had originated that was performed at SRI in 1976. So that part was real. And the thing about the Soviet Union and coming in with information about foreign work, that was real. Beyond that, well, I don't know. I don't think anybody tried to walk through a wall. Although at one time we did have a wall missing. I could have walked through it at that time when we were doing some renovations. We had the wall knocked out. And I regret to this day not having taken a picture of that, because I would have then stood in the open wall with my desk, me behind the desk, and there's trees and the lawn behind it, and the wall was gone. See, I can do what they do in Men Who Stare at Goats. But anyway, yeah, I enjoyed the movie, and there were a couple places in there where they did borrow some factual things from the FTD activities, which is really centered on the foreign work in that early SRI experiment.
Now, the program. Now, I'm asking you this directly. I'm here to learn. I want you to teach me. I've done so much research into this, and the real information is always tough to get to. All right. So the one of the popular versions of this is that the program itself had ended and was passed off and given to different agencies and military organizations over the years, and everybody just handed off the program, starting all the way back at SRI back in 1970, and then it just went through the and that officially the program now by any agency or the Department of Defense is over. Is that your belief, or is the program continuing under another name?
I think as a program, depending how you define program, that say a consolidated group sitting somewhere like we were, I don't think that exists. But I'm not going to rule out the possibility that individuals from time to time have been tapped and brought in as consultants. I'm sure that's happened. So, and in fact, the more the publicity that Stargate and remote viewing are receiving, I think more interest is going to be generating over time throughout the different agencies, and that they will eventually find people within their own group, their own organization that has an interest and has a talent, and then maybe a call on them on special occasions. So I think that probably is kind of the way it's going to go, or has been going, that there are pockets here and there, but it's not official. And it's sort of a bottom-up thing where individuals say, hey, I think I can do this. And then the word filters up. And sooner or later, somebody in management has a problem or an issue that could be resolved or at least applied by remote viewing or some other form of Psi. I'm not sticking only to remote viewing here. There are other ways of experiencing this. So I think it's probably happening, and I think it will increase as time goes on here because of the information that's being made available, and the publicity behind it, and the overall acceptance of the potential is not going to be quite as weird And so maybe someday there'll be more focused efforts, but I don't think there'll be a major program in any one spot. There's always the management issue, because if you want to apply this topic, this ability, whose jurisdiction is it? If you want to describe something remotely, well, that might be of interest to the intelligence community. But if you want to find something, then that's somewhere else. That's maybe in the customs department. So it switches around where it should best be. So the answer is there's really no best place. And that's one of the things we were trying to do toward the end, was find a separate spot somewhere when it looked like we'd have to leave Fort Meade for some, can't forget the reason why we had to do that, but we were looking for another location where we would then become totally independent of any agency and become we'd still be reporting to somebody, whether it be the CIA, which was not a good idea, because we knew that the directors of CIA at the time didn't really have much to do with this topic, as we found out very quickly when the program was transferred to them and then it was canceled. So I don't think it'll be a unified activity like we had, which feels unfortunate. But maybe 50 years from now, who knows? Somebody would be looking at this program and say, yeah, this guy Graff was really way off base. It happened earlier. So I don't know. So,
well, it seems to me, I can't wait to hear your response to this. It seems to me that RV, remote viewing, and precog abilities would be advantageous for the NRO, the DIA, and the CIA. That seems like that's exactly the information. Having real-time information and sensor and telemetry, that, yeah. Mm-hmm. But being able to look into the future is a whole nother consideration altogether. And I think that is something that they would be hugely interested in.
Yeah, of course. And this is what I was trying to do toward the latter part of my involvement with the program. I'd actually written little proposals for different organizations based on the idea of precognition. And in fact, some of the projects that we did, we actually did work on were precognitive, some by accident, some by intention. So naturally, that this is a big area to work with. And in fact, I'm not sure exactly where to draw the line between precognition and ordinary and remote viewing, because there's a thin line here, and it may be a lot of remote viewing really is precognitive. But that's another debate we can maybe get into. But aside from that, being able to perceive incidents in the future, and again, you need to have a track record. You had mentioned earlier about some projects, and I set up having to do with future news. So that demonstrated really clearly that this is certainly a potential, and it can be really accurate. So having people that perceive like with 9/11, there was so many impressions, so much input around the country, not just New York area, about this impending tragedy there. That should have really been a bell ringer for people that would even half curious about this topic, to really think about the power that precognitive abilities can provide, and to avoid these things. So I think this is really, if I were to do it again, I would just put my total focus on developing a precognitive protocol, and forget what the name is, just call it precognitive information gathering. So whatever it is, because there are different modalities that allow you to be more effective in it than others. So that would be the way I would go. And another thing I was trying to do, which got rejected several times, of course, didn't get anywhere, I tried, was to interest people like the State Department in special access groups, special access force groups, who were going to be sent into hostile territory or in the State Department into countries that maybe not as friendly as we would like, and train them to be alert, to train them in remote viewing, to train them in precognitive dreaming. And that's the additional talent or the additional potential that they have going into this assignment, which can be risky. Think what would happen with Iran hostages. Had a number of them been aware of this ability, and then all of a sudden they show up in the morning or the day and complain to their supervisors, hey, something's going to be happening here very soon. We got to get out of here. So, that would be the kind of thing that I can see happening in time when you train people that are going to be in these positions that are at risk.
Would it be something like, I know it'd be deeper than this, but I just want to stay kind of basic here in some ideas. Would it be something similar to teaching people how to be aware of synchronicities and pay attention to those?
Yeah,
as
that's
simple as that, and then get more
yeah,
developed.
Yeah, because that's certainly an easy way to start. I agree. That's a good idea. Because people have these synchronicities. Of course, they may not recognize them. Some of them are really, really not that startling. So you say, well, maybe this chance after all. And it may well have been. But it's a way, an intuition is a good word, of course. People are generally not uncomfortable with the word intuition and built from there. But synchronicities, I think, are really linked with precognition. And, I've written a couple of papers on this already. It's in one of my books, too, that there is a kind of a principle at work. And I think Carl Jung started to develop it, call it the synchronicity principle. But there's something going on at a subconscious level. And here we go to the idea of synchronistic navigation, where there's a certain need or a certain thing you need to avoid, and you don't know why you're doing this thing or this act or going here, and all of a sudden you're there and you find what you need to find, or later on you avoided what you really would have had a lot of trouble with had you continued on that path. So these are things that strike home because they're relatively common experiences. So you build from that, and then you set up the protocols. Well, what is it that you exactly like to know, and when? What is the time frame? Do you want to go by area? Do you want to go by event? Or how do you do this? Or just simply be open? I know that for some years ago when I was really working with the Future News, not just the one project that we did that was published, but with more the exploratory ones, I would just simply seek a precognitive dream about anything of significance. Of course, the critics will say, well, she wait long enough. Well, that's true. That's a good criticism. But if the information is really, really quite accurate, then even the critic would have to back off and say, well, maybe there really was a valid psi input.
How much of it has to stack up? Is there, what I know there's not a fixed number here, right?
Yeah.
But how many synchronicities need to go boom, 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 boom in a day or two for somebody like you to step back and go, okay, well, what if it's like one? One isn't a synchronicity. You need more than one, right? Two is a synchronicity. One isn't a synchronicity.
Well, no, the event itself, you can have one synchronicity.
Can you have one?
Yeah, sure.
One synchronicity?
Of course, it's a meaningful event. Doesn't matter. It's one event. A synchronicity is an event.
Don't you? Okay, help me understand here.
Yeah.
Don't you need to? One is just a thing, but two becomes a synchronicity, right?
No. Well, you have to have two things matching: the need and the event. So that's a pair, right. But you only need one event like that to be called asynchronicity. You still need to pair. You still need the pairing up of need and eventual event. That's two things: the need and the event. That's a pair. But the synchronicity is defined as the combined two. That's a synchronicity.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
I
but in
don't, I
terms,
don't agree with it, but
okay,
okay.
all right, but okay.
So then
This,
you would need three. You need the pairing, and then to me, then you need that third, the second confirmation is what I'm thinking.
well, sure, anything you need to evaluate and confirm, but now the person that has the experience, it's an automatic thing. Wow, how did I find this? How did this come about? They are awestruck, basically. And this is one of the powers of synchronicity. You only need one powerful event like this to be absolutely certain, hey, this really works. Now, a lot of little ones happen along the way, as we travel through the long streets and we go on our daily lives. That a lot of little things happen that are not going to be standouts. And even I don't want to stand up and say, hey, I had a synchronicity today, when maybe only I could see it that way, and nobody else looking at the data would not agree with me. But then there's the more powerful ones, the ones that are really mind-blowing. And then say that's not possible to have happened, but it did happen. So those are the ones that turn people around. These are the numinous ones, the ones that really strike awe into the minds and the feelings of the individual having them. But again, I think these also relate to precognition, because something occurred that nudged my path or your path in a certain direction to get to that intersection, to find that object or that individual. Something brought us together. How did that happen? Some conscious was nudging us in those directions. We didn't know beforehand, of course, that this was going to happen, and not at a conscious level, but at a subconscious level, we probably did. So, I've had, and then the combinations of dream and synchronicity, precognitive dream and synchronicity. Usually we don't think of synchronicities as also having a precognitive dream, but I think that did happen. We just didn't remember it. But even if it did happen, then we can be on the lookout, and then we won't be quite as surprised when that situation doesn't fold, when it's meaningful. So it goes a step beyond a precognition, which is basically perceiving a future incident, which may not have a lot of significance for you. But if that significance is like some of the individuals on 9/11, just didn't go to the office that day because
right. That's a big deal. Yeah.
So there they responded. They may not have had a vivid image of the tragedy that unfolded later, but somewhere in the subconscious mind there was that knowledge that prompted them to not go to the office. So those situations, you can't call it precognitive because nothing was perceived in advance. But you can look at it after the fact and say, well, yes, I must have known something. Otherwise, I would have just gone.
Well, that's that. Okay, so that's that day.
Yeah.
And we're certainly talking about 9/11 right now. So
Yeah.
what about something that was a month prior? Prior to September 11th, and it's some kind of precog. What would you deem actionable? When would you pick up the phone and go, shit's about to go down, man?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people did have these impressions prior to,
Yeah, but nobody did anything about it.
No. See, this is one of the issues that people keep asking me about. Well, if you can't do anything about it, then why bother? And I say, well, yeah, now you're talking about a large event, but at an individual level, you may have an incident that's really meaningful to you. So, like the individual that didn't go to the office that day. So that at the individual level, it would have been really, really beneficial, and it was. But by and large, people are not going to pay attention to people's precognitive dreams, no matter how many there are, or how it's advertised or promoted around. It's because there's uncertainty, but the more you do this and the more you document this, I think in time it will be there will be some way of having it paid attention to. So for example, if we were to set up a group right now that only focused on incidents of a, let's say a train accident thing that might happen in with Amtrak any time within the next, say, month. And somebody's just focused on that possibility. And then sometime, a couple of days from now, a couple of nights from now, you have 3 or 4 individuals coming up with the same impression. Yeah, there's going to be an accident here at this particular location, and they provide sketches of the bridge. And now you have kind of like a teamwork going on, and you've had a track record. Now people should pay attention. Now you should get that information to the Amtrak managers and alert them to this. So, yeah, I think if you could develop it along that line with teams that have a track record, it would be more than people in authority that would have an action hand in this could do something. At least send somebody.
Well, you would have to be able to. I'm talking about the dreamer or the precog person.
Yeah,
you would have to be trained and know how to take notes, how to remember the dream, how to do this, and then how to turn around and turn it into action.
Sure.
Because if you're not trained in that, it's just a dream.
Right.
I had. Let me give you an example. I want your opinion, and then we'll take a break and we'll pick it up when we come back. When I was a kid, I had dream after dream after dream, and I'm talking 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old, right in that period for about 4 or 5 years of me doing this. Okay.
All right.
Didn't understand it. I'm in a studio talking on a microphone. I'm a little kid, right? And interviewing people, taking phone calls, late night talk radio stuff. And I didn't understand it. I completely saw the future. I didn't act on it. I became an artist and played guitar. That's what I did. I didn't become some talk show host, straight out of high school or anything like that. No. Or was I on the high school radio program? No, I didn't understand it. I didn't care. But I absolutely dreamt this for years. But no action on it because it's just a dream.
Yeah. Okay. So ultimately it happened. So you might even call that a synchronicity in a way. You met your own future. So, and it was like a template, an archetype.
But right now, I know, Dale, you're so right, because right now, me telling the story, it doesn't mean anything. It's just a story now, right? It's just a story. But had I said it then, what if I went to my parents and go, when I grow up, I'm going to be a radio talk show guy. Okay, funny, Jimmy, ha, ha, ha. But at least I would have said it. And then I could have now gone, do you remember that time? Do you remember when I used to talk about being a talk show host? I used to dream that. Oh, yeah. Okay. But I didn't say anything. So now today it's just a story. Anybody can predict the future if you're talking about the past.
Yeah, sure. But the fact that you had them that early is a little unique. I know I also had early dreams as well, but they were not, that future oriented. They were more like here, within the next couple of days or whatever. But I can see where if you have the recurring dreams like you had, then there's really more going on than just some wishful thinking on your part as a child, that there's really something within you that's going to be striving for you to eventually get to that point in your life later on. So I can see it happening. When you have repeated dreams like that, then it just has a power to it, and you really should have probably. I don't know if you told anybody about it, but it would have been nice if you had. But
I didn't. I've told the story here on the air. A couple of times, and honestly, I don't. It just sounds like bullshit. So I don't like saying it. If you know what I mean, it's just, had I written it down, wrote a short story or whatever.
But Well,
No, but I know it is confirmation for myself though about this, because I know what actually happened, and that just makes it more fascinating. There is one thing though, and we do need to take a break, but there is one thing that I have mentioned over and over again throughout my life, although I probably mentioned it last week, including for the last 50 years. I have said over and over again, somebody has read my book. Somebody has read my future, because I have deja vu all the time. And I enjoy deja vu when it goes down, but it's creepy. It's creepy. And I was a little kid. I was like 9 years old, 10 years old. I went to somebody, maybe my teacher, my friend. I've been here before. Something's going on. Somebody's read my book. There's time traveling going on. And I have certainly stopped and smelled the roses on this. I've recognized it, and I have said it over and over again. Is deja vu just another form of precog? Is it the same thing, actually?
I think it could be. In fact, I'll be more firm than that. I think it is. I think you had the impression, whether it was in a conscious image or whether it was in a dream that you might have forgotten. So you already had the information about that future thing that you say, aha, I just saw that. So it's already there, bubbling, ready to come to the surface, even though it wasn't a clear image or a clear thought. So I think it has to do with our precognitive ability, looking ahead, keeping a step ahead of time, looking around what's around the corner that you have to be careful about, that kind of thing. So you're already doing a lot of precognitive work at that time in your life, definitely. Yeah.
I have done deja vu. I've been in a room where I have, okay, here we go. It's starting, right? And I've looked over and I know what this person's going to say, and then they say it. And then I know what this person's going to respond with. I know it, and then they say it. And I step back and I go, man, this is fun. This is fun.
Well, many times in meeting somebody I never met before or even seen any picture of, for that first meeting, I would, a day or two in advance, what does that individual really look like? Will I be able to walk up to him or her in a crowd and say, hello, and say right there, that's the one? And I've done that, and it's been very successful. I have this image in say, a dream or a waking image. And sure enough, it correlates very well with the individual I never met before. So yeah, it's fun to do that. Then you walk up and surprise the individual. Oh yeah, here you are. I've known you all along, that kind of thing. So
we were. Let me share this with you. Remember, so we're 8 minutes late on the break, but you're gonna love this. I was just in Chicago. I was in Wisconsin for this conference last month. And I had this crazy deja vu. I haven't even mentioned this to anybody. I'm walking up to this booth. I'm walking outside. I'm going to go smoke a heater. I'm going to go outside and smoke. And I'm walking past this booth, and I hear in my mind's eye this person say, yes, I've got a couple of documentaries on Amazon. That's what pops in my head. Okay. And I'm walking past this booth and I go, oh, Bigfoot. And I went, uh-oh, here it comes. 10 steps before I thought of this. And as I walk, he says, yes, I've got a couple of documentaries on Amazon. I go, dude, I'm walking outside. I can't deal with this right now. And I went outside and I went, oh my God.
Yeah.
And it was just so much fun. And then so he comes outside to talk to me, and I said, man, I just got to tell you something. That was the rowdiest deja vu I've ever had. What are you talking about? I told him. And I'm sharing it with you now. It was crazy. I heard it in my head, and man, it was word for word right out of his mouth. I need to tap into this gift. I got to figure out how to. I got to figure out how to make this work for, help people out or something.
Well, you got a good start. Just keep being open to it, and say, yeah, this is the kind of thing you like to do. I always keep journals and stuff like that of these incidents too. So going back and reviewing them frequently is really helpful, and I do that a lot. And I just got through looking at a memo I wrote 13 years ago, and I couldn't believe I even wrote that or even had that experience. I did that, So but it's the kind of thing that really encourages you and gives you even more impetus to continue with this kind of sneak peek, I call it.
You know what I do? But I chicken out. I've had Paul Smith offer me, to work for me, work with me. Hakeem Isler, of course, my producer, Michelle, who is amazing, right? She's amazing, and that whole circle of, come on, man, let's go. Courtney Brown, let's go. We'll teach you, and I chicken out. I chicken out. I know it's wonderful, and I love remote viewing and its concept. I don't know. I chicken out. I don't know why that is.
Well, you don't really need to work with a lot of people. You just need to dedicate become your own experimenter, become your own receptor, like you already are, and just intend to do it and say, this is the day I'm going to start keeping track. I want more of these, and just record them and look at them when they happen. And that itself is about all you need to do to learn to develop this. It's a self-encouraging kind of thing when you see this in your own writing, and that's as good. Really, it's good as almost any instruction you can get. Now, there's any kind of other material that you might read about or consider is how to really evaluate the stuff and make sure that it did happen as you said. And that's why I like to document things. I like to cut out newspaper articles when it relates to that and make sure I have all that data together. Or even take a photograph. I've had experiences where in doing an ARV, associative remote viewing project, this particular one I'm thinking about right now was 7 days ahead. So I get this really beautiful picture of a waterfall. Well, that's not too uncommon, but anyways, it's really unique. It wasn't an ordinary falls. It was 5 or 6 little fingers of water coming down. So I said, well, that's so vivid. It's probably going to be close to the target, but I won't know for 7 days. So the next day I'm on a hike in the mountains near where I live here in Pennsylvania. And on an impulse, I took a side trail, one I don't usually go on, and I come to a spot, and there's the exact picture. So I took a photograph of it. I said, okay, now I have photographic proof of my precognition. So 7 days later, I get the picture, and it's almost identical to the falls I took a photograph of. So how did that come about? So I combined two things. I combined the precognition and a little bit of synchronicity all in one blow. And right. I enjoyed the hike too, by the way. So
yeah. It's what I do. Besides, another thing I do is I forget to take a break when I'm scheduled to. But what I do? This is my own little habit. So when I wake up in the morning, I do a couple of things that I have to do. But once I put my feet on the ground, I'm sitting on the bed. I do this every day. I'll send out a signal to somebody that I need to speak to and see if they call.
Okay.
It's not something that I'm expecting.
Yeah.
It's just a random reach out.
Sure.
And it happens more than it doesn't.
Yes.
Now, but there's a failed experiment that I'm still working on. I've been doing this for about 3 years. Every day that I am home, when I am making coffee in the morning, I say this person's name out loud. And I do it every day. Every day that I'm home. Okay? They still haven't reached out. But I haven't stopped. I have not stopped. It's weird. Other ones I can make happen. It's pretty easy. I feel like Uri Geller. I'm so good at it. But this other experiment that I've been doing about 3 years, no. And I say the name out loud. Yeah.
Well, you might try that in reverse. Do it in the evening, and take it into the dream time. So in a dream time, you probably have a longer duration of the attention given to the name, and I think it would be more energetic during that state of consciousness. So you might want to try that. Reach out in a dream. Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, it's interesting, and I've never actually focused on that, but I've had colleagues that have, and
entanglement is wonderful.
Mhm.
You're a physicist. When it comes to entanglement and doing stuff like that, I believe that the universe is connected, and I believe that consciousness is the ultimate connector of everything that there is in the universe. Period. That's my research. It's not a belief system. It's not a trust system. It's not a fact. I just think that it's scientific fact. That's my opinion. So if you go and you send out stuff like that, that's the way the universe works, man.
Sure. Yeah, and I think consciousness really is almost like a wave that moves in and out of this reality. So that at the times when it's outside of this reality is when it's interacting or entangling with all these other possibilities, and there are probably an infinite number almost. Who knows what's beyond this reality? There's got to be other ways of interacting with different dimensions. So so I think consciousness pervades all, and what we perceive right now is only the surface level of the here and now, but maybe because we can't perceive it, there are moments while we're sitting here talking that we're elsewhere, but it's not relevant to go there at the moment. It would be too distracting. But I think we wave in and out of this reality, and our consciousness is like a wave, a light wave, electromagnetic wave. But it's not electromagnetic in that sense. It's just an analogy. The wave equation in quantum physics is not. It's really a wave. It's just a patterns that emerge from the properties of light. So it just looks like a wave. But I think consciousness does weave in and out of whatever reality we're in, and that's where we link in with this information source that we access in remote viewing and in precognitive dreaming and some forms of intuition, and where synchronicity is activated and brought into a dynamic motion that comes true. So I think all these things interact. In the consciousness is really like a flow all the time, so in and out.
Well, I just changed my opinion. The coolest guy at Fort Meade was Dale Graff. Just changed my opinion. Hey, Dale, stay right there. Let's take our break.
Okay.
Let's get that in. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Dale Graff. We're talking about precog. We're talking about the Psi Field. We're talking about remote viewing, all of the fun stuff. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and get the Fade to Black official podcast. 2,000 episodes, all of them commercial free for just $2 a month. Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's fade to black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? How you doing? Jimmy Church here. Special announcement. Get your Fade to Black t-shirts. That's right. Help support the show. Help support everything that we do over here. We've got 2 t-shirts. We've got 2 ways to get them. Get your Fade to Black t-shirt today. Go Backley Tappy. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut. Today we're headed to Bolivia, Tiwanaku, Peru, and of course, Omapunku. Brian, exciting. Thank you so much for everything, my friend.
Always an honor. Right behind us is the sacred river of the Inca that goes past Machu Picchu. So we're going to be driving up to its source at 15,000 feet above sea level and then down to Lake Titicaca.
So today we hit 15,000 feet.
Yes.
Crazy. And you can do it with us. All you have to do is go to hiddenincatours.com. Simple. We've got 2 tours coming up next year, one in June for the summer solstice, right? And then another one right here in November. So hiddenincatours.com. Come and hang out with Brian and I and his amazing team.
Right on.
River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Dale Graff is our guest, and amongst other things, an amazing CV and career. But he was the contract manager for Stargate and remote viewing out there at Fort Meade. Tonight, we are talking about the Psi Field and remote viewing and other subjects. And let's get straight back to it. Dale, what is your definition of the Psi Field?
I look at it as a generic term that includes all these other terms that we use over the years, whether we label it telepathy or intuition or precognition or remote viewing. I call those terms fit in to the idea of a field, that we are immersed in something like a field where this information or this ability can manifest. So I lump all these other terms that we give it, because sometimes I think we kind of get locked in by using single terms as being exclusive. But we're just immersed in this field, in this domain, in this structure. You know, I hate to use the word structure. It could be something different. It could be a tendency, energetic patterns, or whatever. So it's a term which brings all of these concepts together. I think Roger Nelson, with his consciousness field project, demonstrates that too. That it's a global consciousness. Whatever this is, we're immersed in it. It's like I think in physics we have now the idea of the boson field with the Higgs particle, and that gravity and all these other properties of what arises and gives matter its mass is part of this entity, this field that we are immersed in. So it's a concept which contains all of these, and then somehow it's like a gravitational field in conceptualizing it.
How does that, and especially for you, how does that fold over to dreams?
Well, in the dream arena, in the dream world, whenever a dream occurs, which is probably 20 to 30% of the night, we dream a lot at night. You don't remember them, but most dreams are coming from our subconscious, near subconscious areas where we have memories, where we have remnants from the previous day, those where we have creative ideas, where we imagine, where we have imaginative things happening. So these are created at our subconscious level, and some of it is very close to surface from our surface memories. So that's sort of a separate thing. It's sort of the way our mind, our brain mind, is constructed. Now, when we go to the psi component, now we're opening it up into connecting with this field concept idea. I think it's common to talk about data sources like a field. The Akashic records are sometimes used from the Tibetan tradition, or even the movie Matrix made it sound like we have a geometric structure out there somewhere. So there's just this field idea that exists even with dreams, but these are dreams that are tapping in to our deeper potentials, into our psi potentials, however they might be labeled. And in dreams, you can, whatever the information is that's as yet unknown, if it's psychic or psi based, it can be most of anything, or any of the sensory roads show up in dreams. That's why I like to think about dreams as the theater of the mind. You get this three-dimensional thing going on in your mind when you're sleeping, dreaming, and when you go into lucidity, when you actually become aware that you're in the dream, you really can develop a more of a direct interaction with the environment, such as that is within the dream space, and it can seem very real. And in fact, I know individuals that actually experience healing from interacting with dream figures in the dream, calling upon a dream figure that would represent a doctor or a shaman to do whatever that individual, the dream figure, needs to do to celebrate the healing or achieve the cure. And then something will occur within the dream. You might perceive a ceremony of some kind of action. Maybe the shaman will throw a ball of light at you, and you feel the heat hit the body part of the body that needs healing. So something is happening that you're observing, which is somewhat beyond the ordinary material that you have stored within you. It's coming in from some deeper level, maybe some archetypal level, to use one of Carl Jung's terms. So this interaction then occurs, and we can kind of direct it in a certain way. We can't totally correct or direct the exact content, but we can certainly intend for that kind of dream to occur, and then seek the benefits that it can provide us in that dream space. So,
is the dream state just another reality? Is it just another dimension? It's just as real as this right now, this waking moment, but we have access to that other reality with our consciousness while we sleep, and our brain then moves into this other reality, which is just as real as this dimension. Am I far off in thinking like that?
no, in fact, there's some movement right now in the dream community that recognizes lucid dreaming as sort of a separate type of consciousness. In fact, it's not just in the lucid dream community; it's in the psychological community as well, the ABA. So recognizing lucidity as sort of a different form of consciousness, separate from awake and the other forms of sleep. So it's different, and it does look like it could be occurring in some alternative reality. Where do these images really come from? Maybe it's a shared thing, partly from our imagination and partly from some source, from some archetypal base, which is common to all individuals. So then we get into the idea of unity, and we get into the idea of the interconnectedness and entanglement here as well. So there's something going here that's more than just simply the way memory and brain functioning ordinarily works. We're going beyond that here. And in fact, there's some work that started many years ago, Hamaroff's work down at the University of Arizona, with the idea that there are certain structures in the brain that would conform to a quantum computing capability in terms of the size and that. So it may well be that at certain levels of this dreaming that we have, we are actually activating this quantum connectedness notion or ability that may be there, and this might be the key for how we experience ESP or remote viewing or precognitive dreaming. So we're always looking for ways of linking this inexplicable psi ability to brain structures and areas of the brain, and maybe there is something at this micro-based level that was discovered at the or that Teneroff described at the University of Arizona. So we may be, in a certain sense, many quantum computers. At least part of our brain may be like a quantum computer right now.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
I enjoy I enjoy media. I love movies and TV series. I like scripted stuff. I love science fiction, comedies, just as long as it's intelligent and well written.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy that. But you know what I enjoy just as much or more is getting ready for bed. Man, dream time to me, sleep time to me is so important. And I love getting ready. My bed is set up. My room is set up for dream time. Okay, I've got grounding sheets. I've got it's set up to. I've got blacked out windows. Right, I got it going on. But this is what I do more times than not. This is probably 6 out of 7 nights a week. This is what I do. Is I will listen to nonfiction history or science. So a book, right? So I'll listen to science. I'll listen to ancient history about Egypt or human, and I listen to that while I sleep, and I go back in time, or I go into the world of physics. If I'm listening to something about cosmology or the universe or physics, an example would be like Kip Thorne wrote a great book on the physics, the science of interstellar. He wrote that movie, Interstellar. And so he's got a book out about that, and it's an amazing book. Pop that book on and listen to that and fall asleep, and you're there, man. You're going through the universe, and I enjoy that. Is that a good way to take advantage of dream time? And when we're talking about precog, this stuff stimulates my mind while I sleep, and I formulate ideas that I have when I wake up.
Yeah, that certainly sounds like a good way to go. But to get ready mentally and to prepare for whatever adventure will come to you. But then when you want to really practice a specific precognitive task, you probably want to do the opposite and not have any promptings or any look at anything at all, but just simply focus on the objective, write out the objective, and then just intend whatever's going to happen that night. This is it. My dream time is totally devoted to this intention. So you're going in without any of the other material, which is very good other nights, just to stir up the neurons, so to speak, and get the imagination going. And it certainly is a great base, a great procedure, I would think, for the next time when you want to do this and you want to pursue a precognitive dream for some objective. Because it would be difficult to mix the objective with the material that you're actually seeing at the same time. They probably overlap, or one would influence the other too much, and it would distort the actual dream, the actual precognitive dream. So you want to be relatively bland in a way when you approach a night for focused precognitive dreaming, and not do anything. And in fact, I try to stay away from any media that night before if I'm doing an experiment in precognitive dreaming,
Interesting.
or even any reading at all. And
you don't want to contaminate.
Yeah, that's it. And even the day before or during the day prior to when you do this, get into more of a expansive, universal, unified frame of mind. I find being in nature to be an excellent place for doing
For
this.
sure.
Yeah.
Well,
so,
okay, let me ask you this. This is okay. So on the nights that I don't listen to something like that, which is rare, I need to, my brain after this show, my brain is still firing. I need to get off of this show. I need to get off of the adrenaline. And so one of the ways that I do that is I jump into something about science or history, and I can I can calm my brain down. But this is my other thing that I do. I'll open up my sliding glass door wide open and crack the shades and have the sounds of the night come in. Now, when I do that, guaranteed cinematic dream. Guaranteed all night long. Deep, thorough sleep for sure. And you just mentioned nature, and that's how I do it. I'll listen to the sounds of the night.
Yeah, that's great. And I live in a rural area, so it's just convenient to have the nature all around and listen to those sounds. And that's great. And I've been doing that most of my life. I've always grown up and lived in rural areas. So maybe my bias is toward nature for cooling down, so to speak, or to be getting into the right, the phrase reframe of mind. I don't quite know what that means, but the right feeling, the right sensitivity for then opening up to the unexpected that you expect to have occur in the dream.
Now, okay, now you seem like my dad or the dean of my high school, so I don't want to get in trouble with this question. Promise me you're not going to ground me to my room for a month. All right. I don't do this. I don't ever. But there are people that go, well, what about a little before bed? I dream really well when I do the puff puff. Is that something that you would recommend for dreaming?
Well, I don't know. I don't have any experience in that direction, but I know some people that do, and I'm sure it would stir up a dream, definitely. But it probably would be, I don't know, could be not well organized. Could be very random. For sure, it would be an experience. But beyond that, I can't really comment on it. I don't think you'd be gaining any particular intuitive or psychic insights out of it. But
What about music? What about
Oh,
music?
yeah, music is really great. For having great dreams, even without music. By that, what I mean by that is when I first began studying dreams, been a while now, but when I did this, I wanted to see whether an intention, a specific intention, could then generate a very specific dream. So for a whole week, each night, I chose a different musical instrument to hear. Now, I'm not a musician. I don't really play any instrument, but I thought I'd try music. I like to hear music, but I never remembered any music in a dream. So that was my intention. Tonight is the night I'm going to really hear the most beautiful flamenco guitar playing I ever heard in my life.
Nice.
So I fell asleep, and then sometime later, here is this incredible dream where there's a stage and there's a guitar player. It was the Spanish style, and really played a beautiful, beautiful tune. It almost brought me to tears when I woke up. It was so beautiful. Okay, that was really impressive. Now, the next night, I tried the piano. Okay, I'm going to try dreaming about some really great piano music. And that night, in the dream, I hear my dream theater of the mind goes on. I see the piano player on the stage, and it was Scott Joplin playing The Entertainer, and that was so fast. That music went so fast, and he kept going faster and faster and faster. I couldn't even see his hands; they blurred. But the music was so beautiful, and once again, I had this beautiful music that I normally wouldn't have even begun to imagine having this. And I went on like this all week, and different instruments, including a full orchestra. And that was a mind-blowing dream, because it's right up front with the orchestra playing loudly, every instrument blaring away. Can you imagine a dream like that?
I've had those dreams. I've had those. You know what used to do it for me? No, it still does.
Yeah.
Okay. The movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. There is a cut in the beginning of the film when they go from the apes to the future, right? And it's the space station. But on that cut, the Blue Danube by Strauss starts playing, right? Yeah. Okay. So if I was watching 2001: A Space Odyssey at night, and the Blue Danube started playing, I would fall asleep like within 2 minutes. I would never get through the movie, right? Okay, so then one night, and this started maybe 4 years ago, it's like, okay, no books on tape tonight. Let's listen to Strauss, right? Let's listen to the Blue Danube. So I cue it up. I start playing it. I turn out the lights. On All That I Love, Dale, I don't remember the second bar. I was just like, boom, out like a light. I don't remember anything. And I would wake up in the morning. Didn't I play Blue Danube last night? I don't even remember. I think I did. It would put me under that quickly.
Wow.
And so my question to you is that my brain being triggered to go to sleep because of Blue Danube, of what the movie had done to me, for years, and that my brain was just triggered by it? So I did it many, many times since then. Instant sleep, Strauss, the Blue Danube, instant for me.
Well, yeah, that's great. I think that's what happened. And I think some of the tapes you can get, like from the Monroe Institute, also like that, where you listen to the various tapes that they have for different purposes. But whatever the purpose is, they can be very relaxing. And before long, off you're sleeping, the tape may still be going on, but you don't hear it because you're now blocked out. You don't even hear that sound. But it really was effective in having you go to sleep. People that have insomnia, I don't see why they have insomnia. There's so many ways in which you can get off and enter dream time without all that other stuff. So, there are ways, the triggers that we have for, it's like in lucid dreaming. one of the methods for achieving a lucid dream is to look at your hand, and it might be similar to your music analogy, and you look at the hand and say, tonight I'm going to, when I have a dream and I see my hand come up, that's going to be the sign that I have that I'm sleeping. I'm now aware of the dream. I cannot become lucid. So it might be an ordinary dream, and all of a sudden there's some activity going on, and there's a figure comes toward you and puts up the hand, and wow, that's now I must be asleep in the dream because it's this hand signal. And then you can go on from there and do the experiments or experimentation that you want in the lucid dream. Now that you are actually aware of being in the dream, dreaming. Now there are other methods of becoming lucid in a dream, but that's one way that works for some people.
Give me another method.
Oh, the other, okay, yeah, here's the one that I like only because I stumbled into it early on as a child of about 5 or 6. At that time, I was very curious about dreams because, I had them, but nobody else in the family ever talked about them. So I thought, well, maybe it's something unique to me. Of course, it isn't. People just don't talk about them. So anyway, one night, I was really curious what happens when I go to sleep, because the next thing I know, I'm awake in the morning. What happened to those 6 to 8 hours? Where was I? So I thought, well, I'm going to trick myself. I'm going to trick my mind. This is a kid talking to me, me talking to myself. That doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't make sense, but it made sense to me then. So I just held on to awareness. And when I felt myself drifting, kind of losing it. Like sometimes when you drive at night, you have that feeling. So here I'm drifting. I'm getting sleepier. And I say, no, I'm not gonna go to sleep. So I pull back, and then go again and again, and with a couple of oscillations back and forth like that, pop, I'm right into a dream. That's all. Here I'm dreaming. I'm in a dream. I moved right into a dream, like Alice going down the rabbit hole, I guess.
Right.
So now, wow, this is really wonderful. Now what I do? So I'm just a kid. I didn't know what to do. I just kind of messed around. It wasn't a very profound experience, but the fact is I was now in a dream, and I remembered the dreaming. And later on, I would tell parents, I said, no, you can't do that. That's not possible. But well, okay, it is. I did it, but I didn't tell anybody.
Yeah. Parents don't know. Adults don't know anything. You know that, Dale.
So it was fun. I did that for a couple of years until I got too engrossed in what you're taught in elementary school, and I got away from it. But there for a while, I was really going into this lucid dream exploration as a kid. And now I didn't have the words for it at the time. But later on I must be about 35 years old, and I came across Dream Yoga, a book about this tradition in Tibet, where one of the methods of inducing lucidity is just what I've just described. So here as a kid, I sort of stumbled into it because I wanted to find out where I went when I went to sleep. So I found out all right. So it was an old trick, an old Tibetan trick. So
I love that. How do you? This is something that I've talked about this many times on the show. I'm not going to bore you with it now, or the audience. But do you have the ability to repeat a dream?
Yes. It's not going to be identical, but if you want to have a repeated dream of a certain theme, like if you're writing a story, like Robert Louis Stevenson would do, he would, whenever he got stuck on a plot, he'd go into a dream and have the dream carry forward that plot, and then the same thing would happen later if you have to redo that dream. But no, dream reentry is a common practice. If you really want to work and understand the content of the dream, it's really difficult and probably not even worth it to have the identical dream. It always has to be something, a different twist to it, a different learning process from it. But if you have a dream that you don't fully understand, maybe you woke up too soon or something. It didn't seem to end. It didn't have a conclusion or a theme that was clear. So then the next night you say, okay, tonight is the night I'm going to continue when I started last night, but this time I want to learn what was going on. Was there a dream message here? Was something I need to know about myself or relationships or whatever is going on in my life? And then generally the dream will pick up, maybe not repeat, but it will certainly go to the ending and continue from there on, and provide the missing aspects that maybe were not present in the previous dream, or a new twist to it that maybe was more important now than what the original dream was presenting. So yeah, and this. And repeated dreams are really important too. If somebody has a reoccurring dream, particularly if it's of a nightmare quality type, really frightening, and even though it may not be identical, most repeated dreams are not totally identical. There's some variation, but then you want to find out why are you having these nightmares. True, there may be some biological or disturbance, genetic related, who knows, or dietary, but sometimes the repeated dream is more of a message type of dream. There might have been some trauma that you need to work on, that you were pushing back and not wanting to face, and have that come forward in a dream and deal with it directly. In fact, that's one of the advantages of lucid dreaming. You can actually break habits this way. I know of a case where a colleague of mine worked with this individual who wanted to quit his smoking habit, which was really destroying his lungs, but he couldn't really stop. He had to go back to the cigarette night after night, day after day, until he started working with this friend of mine that got him to learn how to lucid dream. And the instruction was, okay, seek a lucid dream that will provide help or healing for your addiction and help you cure your addiction. So then shortly after that, he had the dream, a lucid dream, where there's this fire. He thinks it's a fire breathing dragon behind him. He turns around and it is, but he's now no longer afraid of it, and knocks it down into the ground, and beats it away, and it disappears. And after that, he had no inclination to light up.
Same thing happened to me with Captain Crunch.
Oh,
but that's another story. But I'll tell you this though. This started about 25, 30 years ago, and I had this repeating dream, and I would always go in and repeat the dream. And the dream was me going to an airport, skirting around, didn't have a passport, skirted around security, got onto a plane, flew to another country, got off of the plane, avoided the police, got to a boat, cruise liner type boat, went on, got my stateroom, head out to the open seas, pulled into another port, went up, climbed these stone stairs to the top of this mountain, and went to a secret megalithic site. Very complex dream, but I would have it over and over again. All right. Until it friggin' happened.
Okay.
Now, and I never made, it was just a fun dream to have. It was some crazy adventure and then it happened in real life in that order, all the way through to the site. And now I can't have that dream to save my life. It's weird. I try. I used to be able to go to bed, Dale, and go, okay, tonight I'm going to do the boat dream. Right. I can't do it now. It's weird. I can't jumpstart that one.
But did you ever run into anything in reality like that?
That's what I said. No, I ended up living the dream. I did. And once I lived it and did identical, everything that happened in the dream happened in real life on a trip. And now I can't have that dream. That dream is like, it's been used up and put away.
Why? That's what happened. It was a precognitive thing. It happened, and that's it. You don't need to have it anymore. Although it would be nice, probably, to have remnants of it just for memory's sake. So maybe you can come back from it from that point of view, like you mentioned earlier about listening to your music or looking at pictures, just look at photographs from that trip and say, okay, I'd like to relive this trip, at least part of it. And I'll bet you'll be able to redream some of that adventure that you just described. Yeah, it's just this time to shift the focus. This already happened. Here's the picture that reminds me of it. Let me go back and redo part of it and experience this.
Last question before we say goodnight. And by the way, Dale, perfect show, my man. Perfect show.
Okay.
I can't wait to not only to meet you, but our next conversation is going to be fantastic. But one last question. When do we react to a precog dream? Or do we react to it? Do we allow it to dictate our own future?
Oh, boy. Oh, I've had precognitive dreams which I thought I would avoid and I didn't. So it's a touchy thing. Yeah. I think, okay, there are times when we can react or take action on them to avoid the potential that's presented to us. And that happened to me one time when I had this horrible dream of a car exploding in a dream. That's all it was. And usually precognitive dreams are really fast and to the point. So when they happen, there's no question that it's important. So it was a white car, the one my wife drove. I've recognized it. I'm sure that was her car, and it blew up. But the next day, I didn't drive this car, but I checked it out. I couldn't find anything wrong with it. But I'm really bothered by this dream. Later, I was still troubled with it. I took it to a garage and had them check it out. And later that day or the next day, they called me and said, well, you were driving a time bomb. There's your fuel pump, which is in the gas tank, was shorting out, and at the fluid level, got to a certain level, you could have blown up. So here was the case where it was precognitive up to a point. It didn't happen because I intervened, or the mechanic intervened by changing the fuel pump. So that's kind of how that one worked out. So we have dreams like that where we can take action on it. So, but a lot of times we can't. So we just have to go with it and accept it. At least they provide a warning, and we can become better prepared for it. Dreams of death and dying are like that. You probably can't avoid that individual's death, but you can at least be better prepared for when it does happen. So but lots of stories about that. We could go on and on about this.
Yeah.
Hey, listen. I'll be seeing you down at Psi Games, so I'll be there.
I can't wait. Wait. We're gonna break bread, and let me tell you.
Yeah.
Dinner is on me. Let's go. Let's do that.
Definitely. We have a really in-depth dream chat. And if you don't also remember the IRBA, the International Remote Viewing Association, is having its conference October out there at Cloud, New Mexico. So you might want to think about coming over for that one too.
Okay, send me the info.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Tell Michelle about it, and and she'll let me know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, listen, we could really go on because I've had lots of years in working with people and working with disturbing dreams and trauma and that. So we didn't quite go that way yet, but into that.
We'll do that on another show. But Dale, just thank you, man. I was so excited and have been excited to finally sit down and talk with you. And tonight just meant a lot to me, my man. And the community really appreciates everything that you do for us. And so thank you.
Yeah, and remember, keep being open to being a synchronistic navigator or a Stargate navigator, for that matter. Either one. Take your pick.
I do my best. Thank you so much, Dale.
Okay.
I'll see you in a couple of months up in Virginia.
Yeah, I'll do that. That's great. By the way, I'll be going up and do some hiking on the Appalachian Trail, so you might want to come up and join me on that one.
Is it possible to keep a cigarette lit and a shot of vodka on the trail? Can we do that?
We have certain containers that backpackers use that would be ideal for that.
That's what I'm talking about.
You can even put pressure in them, so you don't have to do too much drawing.
Dale, you're the best, man. I'll see you in a couple of months there in Virginia at the Psi Gate.
Okay, right. Bye. All right.
Have a great night.
All right,
Dale
okay.
Graff, everybody. Special treat for all of you. Dale Graff just spent 2 hours with all of us. Absolutely amazing conversation. And so with that, it is my Friday, not yours. It's my Friday. I want everybody to just have a great, safe, fun, and amazing weekend. And I am sweet dreams, do all of that stuff. And I'll see everybody right back here on Monday. Until then, all I've got is go backly tappy. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go backly tappy.